Millennials will soon be the largest generation in America's electorate, with potentially dramatic effects on the political landscape. We're teaming up this week with digital media company Refinery29 to explore the impact of millennial women on the upcoming midterm elections. As part of our My Vote series, we polled women across the country with a focus on those issues between the ages of 18 and 35. 34% identified as Democrats, 27% as independents, and 19% as Republicans. The remaining 20% aren't sure of how they identify politically.
We found that 7 in 10 are dissatisfied or angry about the Trump presidency and the direction the country is headed in, but only 30% of them say they will definitely vote in November. With us now are Refinery29 Chief Content Officer Amy Emmerich and CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Great to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
So I don't like this statistic at all, Amy. Young women are the least likely to vote in November. Why is that?
Well, that's the goal, is for us to use media and change that, right? But I think that activism isn't necessarily translating into the poll. And one of the reasons is in volunteerism, in the activism, in the protesting we've seen. That's an experiential movement. They can feel the change. They don't believe that their vote matters right now. They don't trust the process. They believe it's all about politics and not about the policy. So why would you vote in something that you necessarily don't believe in when you can get out on the street and feel the impact that you can make?
And yet they're so invested in these policies and making change, specifically when it comes to health care. Why is health care such an important issue for millennial women going into the midterms?
Well, traditionally, women cared more about the health care in the household, right? They did more doctor visits with their kids. They did more doctor visits with their parents. And as women, we have a long-standing relationship with our gynecologist, starting at the age of 13. Yeah. So we actually go to the doctor more than men. And through that, we see the discrepancies in the system. So they're much more focused, and they can see the issues in the process at large.
You know, it's interesting, Anthony. The repercussions of the 2014 midterm elections are such that people now understand your vote does matter. What is it specifically about these younger women that they choose not to vote? What reasons did they give?
Well, look, for many years we have seen young people less likely to say that they're going to vote. You know, part of that is just as you grow older, you start to see how politics affects your life, right? Or you put down roots, you buy a house, you have kids, you start to see how policies affect you. So part of that is typical. But we also see here that for the folks, the young women who say that they are going to vote, the motivation is really high. We find enthusiasm to be really high. We say that they think that it matters who controls Congress, as opposed to the folks who say that they are not going to vote, and they say that it doesn't matter who controls Congress. So there are big differences there, but the motivation among those who do say they're engaged is really, really high.
Amy, what about actual participation in terms of running for office? We found that a quarter of Republican women in this age group say that women in office would make things worse. What explains that?
Well, there's also the positive side of that, which 50% thought that it would be better to have more women in office, right? When you combine the Democrats and the Republicans. I think when you look at the Republican number, there's something behind this idea of feminism and this belief that more women in office equals feminism, and what is their definition of feminism. And the study kind of showed us that the Republican belief is that feminism is where we blame men for the issues, whereas the Democrat idea of feminism is much more about equality. And I think that there's something to that nuance that's leaning towards that.
I wonder how much
decision.
The Clinton candidacy enshrined that sort of partisan difference around feminism and femininity, Anthony.
Yeah, we've seen differences in this poll and in others where we ask, would you vote for a man or a woman if you had the choice? And Democrats are more likely to say that they would pick the woman over the man. Republicans much less so. And the reason that they give when we ask them is they think it would add diversity. And that's something that we have seen Democrats respond to much more than Republican voters, who also, by the way, overall tend to be older and not necessarily part of this generation that we're focusing on.
It's interesting because every day we talk about how polarized our society is right now. But among millennial women, at least, only 26% said that parties' affiliation mattered to them when it came to their candidate of choice. Are they being honest, or are we seeing something different here?
We are seeing something different, and this is something that defines this generation. Not only are more of them saying that they're independent, but we also see that as they get older, they're not picking a party. Sometimes as folks get older, they pick one or the other. This generation is not. And that's something that is really defining for our folks.
May not
under
be a bad
35.
thing.
Well,
No.
looking for cultural identification as much more than anything else, right?
They're self-identifying in a much more complex way and an intersectional way than any other generation before. So you've got to understand they care about culture and values much more than they care about party affiliation.
Now they need to get out and vote.
And politicians need to figure out how to get them out.
Yeah, it's a fascinating
We need to
subgroup of the
inspire.
American voter. Anthony Salvanto and Amy Emmerich, thank you guys both.
Thank you.